The evening bus rocked gently as it made its way through the quiet streets of Millbrook. Inside, the soft hum of the engine and the faint scent of coffee and rain made it feel like a warm escape from the October chill outside. Diane Foster adjusted her sleeping 2-year-old son, Tommy, in her arms. The ache in her shoulders was a familiar companion now, one that came from carrying not just her child, but the weight of their little world. At 34, she looked older than her years, not from bitterness, but from the kind of quiet exhaustion that only love can bring. Her blonde hair, once full of life, was tied back in a loose ponytail, with a few strands escaping to frame her tired yet gentle face. She worked 2 jobs just to keep their small apartment running, mornings at the downtown diner, pouring coffee and listening to regulars who treated her like family, and afternoons at the community center, helping the elderly with groceries and chores. The pay barely covered the bills, but the warmth of those places gave her something money never could, a sense of belonging. Tommy stirred in her arms, his tiny hand clutching her coat. His long lashes brushed his cheeks as he slept soundly, tired from their busy day. Diane smiled softly. They had spent the morning at the park, his laughter echoing across the swings, before heading to Mrs. Henderson's house. The 78-year-old widow had become their unofficial grandmother. She adored Tommy, even if she sometimes forgot to mention he'd already had lunch when Diane came to pick him up. The bus rumbled along, stopping at corners Diane knew by heart. There was Mr. Chen in the 3rd row, always lost in his mystery novels, and the young nurse from the hospital who smiled at Diane every evening, though they'd never spoken. These small, wordless connections meant everything to her, especially after Tommy's father walked out 2 years ago, leaving behind only silence and unpaid bills. As the bus turned the corner near the business district, the doors hissed open. A man stepped aboard. He wore a navy coat that looked far too expensive for a town like Millbrook, and when he met the driver's eyes, he gave a polite nod. His hair was streaked with silver, his presence calm, confident. Someone used to being in control. He dropped his fare into the box and glanced briefly around the bus. He looked around for an empty seat, scanning the rows with quiet patience. The bus was more crowded than usual tonight. Faces weary from long days, the air thick with the warmth of shared silence. His gaze landed on the open spot beside Diane. For a moment he hesitated, reading the situation with care, the way a mother held her sleeping child, protective yet exhausted. "Would it be all right if I sit here?" he asked softly, his voice calm, respectful, barely louder than the hum of the bus. Diane looked up. His brown eyes held a quiet kindness, and she noticed how he kept his tone gentle so as not to disturb Tommy. "Of course," she said, shifting to make room. He sat beside her with measured movements, setting a sleek tablet and a folder of documents on his lap. He looked like someone who lived in meetings and deadlines. Yet instead of disappearing into his work, his eyes lingered on the small boy sleeping against Diane's chest. "Beautiful boy," he murmured, a faint smile softening his features. "Thank you," Diane replied, her voice warm despite her fatigue. "He's been such a trooper today." "It's been a long one for both of us," the man nodded knowingly. "Those are the hardest days," he said quietly. "When you're running on fumes, but someone little still needs you to keep going." Something in his tone, gentle, familiar, made Diane pause. There was experience there, maybe even pain. She didn't know what kind, but it was enough to make her shoulders ease for the first time that day. The bus hummed on, its rhythmic sway almost hypnotic. Tommy was deeply asleep now, his tiny body limp and trusting in her arms. Diane's own eyelids began to grow heavy. She'd been awake since before dawn, serving coffee, carrying groceries, rushing between jobs, and now the warmth of the bus wrapped around her like a lullaby. She tried to fight it, blinking hard as the city lights blurred past the window. But the exhaustion won. Her head began to tilt, nodding gently toward the man beside her. He noticed. Without a word, he shifted slightly, angling his shoulder closer, an unspoken offer of support. When Diane's head finally came to rest against him, he didn't move away. Instead, he adjusted quietly, careful not to wake her or the boy. Then he turned back to his tablet, his movements slow, deliberate, like someone who knew that moments of peace were fragile things worth protecting. The bus rolled through the deepening twilight. Passengers came and went. But for a while in that small moving world, three strangers shared something rare: silence, warmth, and a strange, gentle calm. The man sat quietly, hardly moving, his gaze drifting now and then to the young mother and child beside him. The business papers on his lap lay forgotten. Something about the way Diane held her son, protective, weary yet full of love, stirred something deep in him. For now he simply sat there, a silent source of comfort for two strangers who clearly needed a moment of peace. When Diane finally stirred, it was because the bus was slowing for her stop. She blinked, disoriented, realizing her head was resting on someone's shoulder. Her heart jumped. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, sitting up quickly. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to fall asleep like that." Her face flushed with embarrassment. "Please," the man said softly, holding up a hand. "Don't apologize. You were exhausted." His voice was warm, steady, the kind of tone that made people trust him without meaning to. "I have a daughter myself. I know how hard it can be." Diane paused, caught off guard. He didn't sound like someone offering pity, more like someone who understood. She studied him more closely now. There was no judgment in his eyes, only quiet empathy. "Thank you," she said finally, a small smile tugging at her lips. "For not waking me." "That was very kind of you." He returned the smile, faint but genuine. "Sometimes," he said, "we all need someone to lean on, even for just a few minutes." As the bus neared her stop, Diane began gathering her things and gently waking Tommy. The man reached into the inside pocket of his navy coat, pulling out a business card and a pen. He hesitated for a moment before writing something on the back. "I hope you don't mind," he said, turning slightly toward her. "I own a small firm downtown, Foster & Associates Marketing. We've been looking for someone to help with customer relations and admin work. The hours are flexible and, well, the pay and benefits are better than most." He handed her the card. "If you're interested, call me directly. My number's on the back." Diane stared down at it, reading the neat print. Robert Foster, Chief Executive Officer. The shared last name made her blink in faint surprise, but it was the sincerity in his eyes that truly caught her. This wasn't charity. It was a genuine offer from someone who had simply noticed her. "Mr. Foster, she began, unsure how to respond. "You don't have to say anything right now," Robert interrupted gently. "Just think about it. I have a feeling you're exactly the kind of person we need, someone who knows what it means to take care of others." The bus came to a stop. Diane rose carefully, adjusting Tommy in her arms as he stirred awake, rubbing his little fists against sleepy eyes. "Mama," he murmured drowsily. "We're home, sweetheart," Diane whispered, pressing a kiss to his forehead before turning back to Robert. "Thank you." "For everything. For letting me rest. And for this." She held up the business card slightly, her voice full of gratitude and disbelief. Robert smiled warmly. "Take care of yourself, Diane, and please, call me if you'd like to talk about the position. I mean that." As she stepped off the bus, the doors closed with a soft hiss behind her. Diane stood there for a moment on the quiet sidewalk, the city lights just beginning to glow against the deepening dusk. She watched the bus disappear down the street, carrying with it a man who had somehow changed the course of her life in a single evening. She looked down at the business card in her hand. Robert Foster, CEO, then at Tommy, who was now fully awake, eyes wide as he took in the glowing shop windows and flickering street lights. "What do you think, little man?" she asked softly. "Maybe things are finally looking up." Tommy pointed toward a street light that had just flickered to life, its golden glow cutting through the growing dark. "Pretty," he said, his small voice full of wonder. Diane smiled, her heart swelling. "Yes," she whispered, tucking the card carefully into her purse. "Very pretty." 3 weeks later, Diane Foster sat at her new desk in an office that overlooked that very same street. The sign on the glass door read, "Foster and Associates Marketing." The job had come faster than she expected. She'd called Robert the day after their meeting, and what she thought would be an interview turned into something else entirely. An honest conversation between two people who understood what it meant to start over. The position was everything she'd hoped for and more. It challenged her, valued her ideas, and, most importantly, allowed her to be there for Tommy. The company offered on-site child care, and every morning she dropped him off at a bright, laughter-filled daycare just down the hall from her office. For the first time in years, she could work without guilt, knowing her son was safe, happy, and nearby. Robert had kept his promise about understanding people. He ran his business the way good people live their lives, with compassion and respect. But what truly changed Diane wasn't just the job. It was what it had taught her. For so long, she had been the one giving, to customers at the diner, to the